Hi, and welcome to Girls Lunch, your mealtime companion where we talk about food, gender, sexuality, and where everyone is welcome.
I am not Nicole Hilton.
I am not Julia Andreas. Imagine if this is someone's first episode. They're going to be like, what the fuck?
What are they talking about? I'm Julia Andreas.
I'm Nicole Hilton. Oh, we did the
Yeah.
switcheroo.
Gotcha. We
Yeah.
gotcha real good. Nicole, is there a grocery store that you absolutely refuse to shop at? Do you have grocery store beef?
I can no longer eat beef, so no.
You're a vegetarian and you ain't fucking scared of them?
Yeah! Yes. I don't have grocery store beef. I was trying to think if there's anywhere I just like refuse to shop at. I don't think so. I mean, I have my like preferred places.
Yeah, I don't really have grocery store beef either, but my husband David does with like
I'm glad he
basically,
does, because I
every-
was like, what if neither of us do and this is just like a nothing question?
I know, I was kind of worried about that when you were like, no. And I'm like, oh no. But no, my husband David does not, like, refuses to shop at Walmart, but also Whole Foods. It's like both sides of the spectrum.
That's
it's
funny.
Just, like, absolutely refuses on both accounts.
What is his beef?
I think it's part of his little ADHD brain where both stores are just too overwhelming, you know?
Yeah.
There's too many options, they're too big, they're too, like, brightly lit. And he's just like, no.
Yeah.
And so, like, when David and I go grocery shopping, which I'll get a little more into detail about in a second, but, like, we go to our local employee-owned tiny grocery store that's been there for, like, since the 30s. There's a brand or a chain called Town and Country, but they're all locally or employee-owned. So they're all pretty different depending on which one you go into. But the one that's, like, by us, we adore because it's just like you get what you get. There's plenty of like stuff because I can get all of my non-dairy goodies there without a problem.
Important.
But it's not like they don't have like rows and rows of different kinds of produce. It's like you want apples, you want an orange, and I'm like, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Here's the apples, or here's the apple one. You get one.
Exactly. But yeah, like when David and I go grocery shopping, because I kind of want to talk about how everyone has a different method of grocery shopping.
Oh, yes.
And I find this is something that I find so inherently fascinating that, like, when I'm out with friends, new friends, I always just want to be like, how do you guys grocery shop without sounding like a little weirdo?
Like, the anthropologist in you just wants to come along so that you can walk behind the cart and take notes like,
Not the double stuffed Oreos. Okay, I see how it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what David and I do is like once a week we sit down and we plan out what we are going to have for dinner that week. Like we go through all of our cookbooks and like our recipe books and whatever, and we like are like, oh, I'm feeling some pasta this week. Like let's have this pasta dish. Or like I'm feeling wonton soup. Like let's have that. And then we make a list based on like all those items that we need, plus like any staples like toilet paper or cereal or stuff. And then we just go to like our one grocery store and just do all of our shopping there. If there is something special coming up or like we're feeling super fancy, we'll go to our local fancy butcher fine goods store. It's called Primal. It is a delight, but it is so incredibly expensive. But their fish is so incredibly good. So, like, if you want a really nice slab of fish, or, like, if David's having friends over and they want, like, really nice sausages, we'll go there and pick some stuff up.
Ooh.
But yeah, we usually go grocery shopping only once a week, and it is most of the time, I'd say, like, 80% of the time we both go together. Now tell me.
Oh, okay.
Now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to tell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not entirely dissimilar from how Ryan and I do things. I will say that, like, in some ways, Ryan, like, really doesn't care. Like, he's very, like, not picky when it comes to, like, he'll eat kind of whatever, as I think I've said on this podcast before.
Yep.
So he leaves a lot of it up to me. I'm the inverse, where I care a lot. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be hosting this podcast. The way I usually grocery shop is I will look at the ads, like the weekly ads, And I sort of work backwards from like, okay, this is like less applicable now since I eat a lot less meat, but since meat is usually the most expensive thing, I work backwards from like, okay, there's a good deal on ground turkey this week. So, okay, well, what can we make with ground turkey? Well, we'll probably have tacos, and then we can also have spaghetti sauce,
Mm-hmm.
right? I try to avoid having to go to like 5 different stores, but I usually end up going to like one or two. Usually I go by myself, but also Ryan often will go with me. It usually is just sort of like has depended on like our work schedules and things like that. Like if I'm in school, like my schedule's a lot more flexible in the sense of like I have time during the day and I can go to the grocery store when it's
Mm-hmm.
not very crowded. Your method of grocery shopping sounds very nice and pleasant to me.
Yours sounds very thrifty.
It's very thrifty. I was going to say I do make myself a little bit insane with the coupon crunching.
I always found that very impressive.
Thank you. It's just my own neuroticism, my neuroses. Ryan is the inverse, where he's like, oh, okay, we need toilet paper. This looks good. And then he just gets it. And I'm like, what?
That was $10.
Yeah, it is. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, dear listener, we're talking about grocery shopping
Grocery
today.
stores.
Grocery stores?
I mean, like, grocery store. Okay, so this is like, this is my disclaimer where I was like, haha, I always really like finding out about, like, people's grocery shopping habits and grocery stores in general. I'm just gonna do an episode about grocery stores. That won't be too hard and definitely not be able to be self-contained into an hour and a half long episode. And so, this is gonna be a very generalized episode because there is just so much in food shopping in general. Like, some things I probably will not touch on or won't touch on in this episode is going to be like ethnic grocery stores, although I really wish I could. The voucher system during World War II, though I wish I could.
Oh, yeah.
Just to try and make this a more contained episode. It is more just about like the general history of grocery stores and what it's like shopping through time in America. We will probably do some more specialized episodes later on because it is an absolute beast of a subject.
Oh, hang on. I gotta get my reusable grocery bags. Okay, I got those. I'm gonna get a cart.
Actually, we're starting in the 1600s to 1700s, so you can put all that away.
Oh, okay.
You're not gonna need any of it.
I'm throwing it away and pushing it off a cliff. It's good. It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, we're gonna start back in the revolutionary time. So, woo, time machine.
Whoa!
Nicole, you are a little housewife and you have to go to the market.
Am I wearing a mob cap? I simply must be.
Yes, you can. You can wear a mob cap.
Yay.
And you're gonna have your little baskets and maybe your kids to help you, and you're gonna go and you're gonna be like, hey, you salesman, give me a good deal on these carrots. They're gonna be like, sure. And after you go to the market, you will probably go to your small country store or general store that's in your little town or community. And these were built with like logs, linked by mud mortar, like very basic. And they would carry groceries. So a little etymology. Most stores today are actually supermarkets. A grocery store is a place that only sells shelf-stable products. The word comes from the French word grocerie,
Oh.
a shop, a shop that sold sugar, tea, and spices. A place that is like that sells both shelf-stable food and fresh food is technically a supermarket. So our grocery stores today are supermarkets.
Okay. See, I always wondered about this because sometimes when you go to, well, I guess I should say the supermarket, or if you're looking at like a weekly ad or a flyer that says like, and they'll sort things into different categories. There's always a category that says grocery. And I've always been like, what is that? Like, what does that mean? And now I know.
So at your local little country or general store, you could buy things that you basically couldn't grow or barter with other people, right? We kind of talked about this a little bit in Kirsten's little book, but they would carry soaps and spices, some salt, dishware, books, hardware, leather goods, axes, log chains, kettles, pots, pans, saddles, harnesses, and shoes, And not to mention, if you or your family members were feeling a little down or under the weather, Nicole, you could also get your patent medicines, your turpentine, and your Epsom salts.
Oh, good. I was wondering where I would get those. Besides, like, the guy that sets up a little cart in the town
Mm-hmm.
square about his miracle elixir.
Fast forwarding a little bit through time to the 1800s to 1900s, this is when we start to see like actual stores. So frame buildings replaced log ones. So now, Nicole, when you walk into the grocery store, it's a little nicer.
Hmm.
And they were built with cellars that were cool enough to store more perishable items like cheese, butter, or eggs. And they also had barrels of molasses, whale oil, and camphene, which was an early form of kerosene. So these were like much bigger because they were able to carry barrels of things instead of just like, I have my basket of soaps. Here you go.
Gotta hope you don't mix up the molasses and the whale oil, though, huh? You don't want to be putting whale oil in your cookies or
No.
molasses in your. What do you put whale oil in?
I think like lamps. I feel like people
Oh,
also put them in lamps.
yeah, that seems right.
And so, like, at grocery stores around this time period, everything was kind of purchased in bulk by the grocer and then sold from these barrels or canisters. But you, as the shopper, would actually not go in and scoop something, right, for yourself. It would, like, mostly be behind a big ol' like, bar or counter. And you'd be like, hello, good grocery man. I would like 1 pound of cheese, please. And they would weigh them out on platform scales, which were created in 1831. And if you like wanted some oats or sugar or the cheese, you would let the clerk know how much you wanted, and they would weigh it out in a cloth bag and hand it to you. There was a distinct like kind of like service happening. It wasn't self-service, like you weren't grabbing things for yourself. You're like, I want 1 pound of that, and they would weigh it out and hopefully be very truthful in their numbers.
Oh, oh.
There's a lot of when technology starts turning and there's new options around, people are always like, oh, you don't know with those scales. You don't know if they're cheating you and if they're like messing with them so that you have to pay more and stuff like that. In one of the books I was reading, it was like people were never happy no matter what.
Yeah,
There was always like something that they were upset about.
that sure is humans.
That sure is humans. And so this was kind of like the basic kind of grocery setting that you would have kind of up until World War One when instead of a cloth bag, they gave you a paper bag.
Mm.
But around this time period, like late 1800s, is the beginnings of the first commercial grocer, which will become the first chain grocery store, which will become the first chain retail establishment in America. So
Whoa.
it started off as the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company, or A&P, which got its start shipping branded tea to stores all over the country using the Transcontinental Railroad.
Oh.
I had no idea what A&P was, but apparently it is like a pretty well-known grocery store. And like in its beginnings, it started out as a tea company where I'm forgetting the guy who started it, but he was like, what if I put my tea in a box and then put my name on that box and then sold that to stores? Because that wasn't really a thing, right? Like you had all these bulk items, but there were no branded items.
Right.
And so the kind of like idea of a branded item is that people would know what they are getting and like the quality and the quantity. So you'd be like, oh, I'm getting like 1 pound of this very good tea that I know will be very good because I know where it comes from. Another branded item, which you may recognize, is the A&P baking powder. This is the baking powder that basically we all use today.
I know of A&P as a grocery store. I think for a lot of folks, at least like probably slightly older than us or a bit older than us, A&P is like sort of synonymous with like you go down to the A&P, which is like the grocery store, you know? But maybe not to us because there's not really any around. Like I don't know if are they still in business?
No, I think the
Okay.
last store closed in like 2006 or something. Yeah, so the baking powder, which is, probably like their most recognizable branded item today, promised customers consistency and quality. This way, grocers could be able to distinguish themselves by the quality of the products they had. So, like, if you were a grocery store that had, like, hoo, I have all these fancy A&P teas and baking powder, you as a consumer will be like, ooh, I like to shop there because I know what those are and I think they're pretty swell.
Yes, I see. I see. Branding.
Branding. All right, fast forwarding a little bit to the 1920s through 1940s. Here we start to get more brand names and innovations. So you're a little housewife in the 1930s, let's say.
Trying to keep my family alive during the Great Depression, rubbing two nickels together.
Yeah, you're doing a fantastic job. And so you're going to probably go to like separate produce stores because maybe one doesn't carry apples, maybe one doesn't carry that one kind of lettuce you really like. So you're going to go to a couple different produce stores. You're going to stop at your local butcher for like a nice slab of beef, I guess.
Yeah.
Cow.
Yeah.
And if you wanted canned goods, you had to go to A&P or another grocer in the true term of the word of like, shelf stable things. The problem is like you probably didn't have a car.
Right. Women didn't drive. We're not allowed to. It's probably bad for our uterus or something.
Yeah, like you just didn't really drive, or maybe your husband like took the car to work or something. And so you had to be able to either take public transit or walk to the local grocery store and carry all of your groceries home. So, you couldn't really buy too much. Maybe you're buying like, some veggies for your roast tonight, and then you're buying like the meat for the roast, and you're buying maybe a few canned goods, and then you're walking home. You didn't really have to worry about dairy products because they were usually home delivered. We have the milkman.
Yeah, him.
Bakeries too are often home delivered, so you
Ooh.
would get like your bread fresh at home. And even though you like had things delivered, you kind of had to shop more frequently because you just didn't have like the ability to take all the food home with you. So it was less of like shopping at one day a week and more like shopping every day.
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to ask was with that sort of style, because we talked about like how do you grocery shop type of thing. In modern times, it's much easier to just go grocery shopping like, once a week or so because we have refrigeration, freezers, we also have cars, so we can generally transport more stuff back with us. Let's see, 1920s and 30s, we've got early refrigeration at this point, but you certainly can't like freeze a whole bunch of stuff, ahead of time type of thing. So, yeah, that all tracks.
Yeah, it's kind of what I had to do when I was living in Italy because I was sharing a apartment with my roommate and we had like a mini fridge. Like it was bigger than a mini fridge and a little more powerful, but it was essentially like half a fridge, maybe a quarter of a fridge of like a modern American fridge. And so, like, we had to go grocery shopping probably every day, every other day for, like, dinner and things like that because we just didn't have room to keep it. But A&P stores kind of started the idea that you could shop from, like, one place. At the time, A&P was run by two brothers, and they were like, women don't want to run around to multiple stores. They could all get everything they ever need from one store.
They said you could shop at 5 or 6 stores, or just one. Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
I feel like that's marketing that's still used today. Like
Definitely.
you can get everything you need at like for the low prices at Amazon or
Or
Walmart or
Walmart.
Target or whatever. And in like the late 1920s, early 1930s, A&P stores were like at their zenith. They had 16,000 grocery stores,
Wow.
70 factories, and
Wow.
100 warehouses. Because of their giant size, they had enormous purchasing power, and their centralized warehouses helped them save money on distribution costs. So, like, the A&P sort of example of a grocery store was kind of revolutionary and set the standard for, like, the grocery stores we have today. They also became the first chain store, which people had big feelings about.
Oh boy. Is this like the big corporation is coming into my small town and ruining my small town?
Yes. It is essentially like the same argument that was had about Walmart
Ah,
and
yes.
about Amazon, right? It's the same argument over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So A&P was considered like the Walmart of their time, and they were much despised as people feared that they would, and did, run local shops out of business, and that they would destroy the American Main Street, TM. One House representative argued in a 1938 speech against allowing A&P to be a chain. Nicole, if you could read the quote.
Okay. If it is right for one pair of childless brothers to own 10% of the grocery business in America, it is likewise right that 10 pairs of childless brothers be permitted to own all the grocery business in America. The question is, will the country's interest be prompted in a better way by the 1.5 million retail stores being owned by more than 1 million local citizens, or will the country be better off if these 1.5 million retail stores are owned and controlled by a few childless brothers? The repetition of like the fact that they have no children is interesting to me. It seems unnecessary.
Yeah, like he's just really fixated on the fact that they don't have kids and that they're brothers. So, a couple of reporters for The Nation in 1930, Edward G. Ernst and Emil M. Hartle, God, those are some names, also wrote about how, like, just like the type of person who's frequenting an A&P store. When he walks into a chain store, he hopes that he is not seen by any of his friends or any of the local merchants. Yet he does buy in the foreign-owned stores, and the reason he most commonly gives is, money is hard to get, and I must make it go as far as I possibly can.
This is like playing Stardew Valley and going to shop at Joja Mart instead of Pierre's, you know?
It is. Oh my god, it is. Yes. Exactly that. It's like, for shame. Shame that you went to a chain store. There was also, like, a fair amount of racism and class prejudice that, like, pushed for chain stores. Writing in 1925, a home economist and business consultant named Christine Frederick described, like, why she kind of wanted chain stores versus, like, the local store. And she said, to be perfectly blunt, the independent merchant is often a dirty, illiterate, short-sighted, half-Americanized foreigner, or a sleepy, narrow-minded, dead from the neck up American. It irritates and annoys me to trade with such people.
Oh my god. Ma'am.
There was all of this, like, vitriol towards chain stores, but then there was, like, a very specific, like, class of white people who were like, I don't want to have to associate with people who make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We'll get into more about, like, you know, the push behind chain stores actually in our latter half of the episode when we get witty with it. Like, it's a very interesting time in American history where all of these moral panics and ideologies kind of collide. Regardless, Nicole, if you are shopping at a chain store or not, you will be seeing a lot more brand names becoming more common, thanks to two humble inventions: the light tin can and the cardboard box.
Aha. I know from previous episodes, I think pumpkin pie is one of them that people got wild for like canning stuff, putting stuff in aluminum tin can. Wild for it. They just put anything in a can. Wild. I really like that episode of SpongeBob where Squidward buys bread in a can.
Yeah. Yeah, so these inventions could be branded with labels and easily shipped, making it so that, like, branded foods like Campbell's soup or Kellogg's cereal could be on shelves. Some other things that you might find on your shelves would be Kraft mayonnaise, some spaghetti, Clorox bleach, canned veggies and tuna, boxes of cornflakes and cream of wheat, fresh veggies in the summer, root veggies, potatoes, onions, and cabbage in the winter.
Yummy.
And this is, like, a huge time for innovation, so another groundbreaking sort of revolution comes to grocery stores. Self-service.
Oh.
So if you're shopping around in, like, the 20s and 30s, maybe you're shopping at a little grocery store called Piggly Wiggly.
I guess another big mid-century grocery store that the boomers are really attached to.
I love a Piggly Wiggly because that's the grocery store that my grandmother in North Carolina shops at. And so growing up, we'd always see Piggly Wiggly, and I was like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's a great name, you know?
yeah, oh my God, there's a game that I kind of want to play maybe in a future episode called Which One Is Not a Grocery Store? Where
Yeah.
you'd have to like guess which of like these grocery store names is not a grocery store. Because the man who like Clarence Saunders, the guy who started Piggly Wiggly, he had like a bunch of wild grocery store names, and like there was an interview with him where they were like, "Why did you name it this?" And he was like, it makes you go, huh?"
Yeah.
Anyway, so very funny. So, Nicole, this would be so shocking to you and your feminine delicacies to enter the store through a turnstile with a basket on your arm and choose by hand what you wanted, a variety of branded packaged items.
Me, I have been empowered as a consumer, which is all I've ever wanted.
So, if you could kindly read this excerpt from 1929 Time magazine's article, The Piggly Wiggly Man.
Ooh, okay. Piggly Wiggly stores, as many a U.S. housewife knows, are cafeteria groceries. Instead of dealing with salespersons, the customer tours the store with a large basket, makes her own selections from neatly stocked shelves. In spite of its apparent latitude to shoplifters, the Piggly Wiggly idea has proved extremely successful, partly because of its novelty, partly because neat packages and large advertising appropriations have made retail grocery selling almost an automatic procedure.
One could argue that today it's like a fully automatic procedure if you just go to self-checkout.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you 100% can go grocery shopping and not have to talk to a single person. Or you can do the drive up and go, you know, or even I think some grocery stores do like home delivery now, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably jumping way ahead, but
You are.
okay,
That's all right.
I'll reel it back in.
We're going maybe a decade later to the 1940s to 50s, and some things look a little different. Firstly, Nicole, as a housewife, you probably actually drove there in your comfortable car from your comfortable house in the suburbs.
Yeah, my big old Cadillac with I got the little scarf around so my hair don't get messed up.
You got those cute little sunglasses, you're wearing gloves.
Yes.
You're gonna park your car in a fancy parking lot next to
Whoa.
this pretty relatively big grocery store. And instead of a basket, you're gonna have a shopping cart in
Oh.
which you can load up your groceries. So the shopping cart was invented by Sylvan Goldman in about 1937, but it didn't catch on until a little bit later. And interestingly enough, the child seat part of a shopping cart wasn't added until 1947.
I want to know what they did with little kids in the meantime.
I think they just had them in the cart.
Yeah.
They're just sitting along the vegetables next to the potatoes.
If you just pack them in, you know, like if you kind of cordon them off from, you know, all the good stuff, then that'll probably keep them, they'll be nice and tight in there, you know, they'll be safe.
Have them hold the delicate fruits so they don't
Yeah.
get too bruised, you know? Put those kids to work.
Exactly.
So now grocery stores were off the main drag, and they were considerably larger, and they had spaces for cars to park. They also had refrigerators and could sell perishable items like meat, seafood, dairy, and produce. And so instead of going to like a butcher, you could go straight to your grocery store. And it didn't really matter that you and your family couldn't possibly eat all of this food loaded up in your shopping cart before it went bad because you had a refrigerator at home.
Haha.
So as more women began to work outside of the home, convenience became the key seller of products like prepackaged or quick cooking foods. So you would also find a lot more of those in the 1940s and 50s. You know, that's kind of the era where we get like all of this prepackaged
Your
quick-footed,
minute rice.
all of these terrible inventions like the Jell-O salads and whatnot, and all of that fun stuff. But with like the creation of or the popularization of cars and the creation of suburbs and kind of like this separation from the American main street, places developed that like there were no grocery stores at all, called food deserts. Like this is still something that we have today. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that 7% of American population lives in food deserts today, no grocery store within 10 miles of where they live.
Which is still a problem because, like, as a culture, we have adapted into assuming, like, everybody has a car. But that is not true. And that's
Not
why
true
we have food deserts.
Oh, correct. The book I was reading, Grocery, was great in some ways because it had really in-depth insight into how a grocery store works. Terrible in other ways because the author was no better way to describe it other than diet pilled, like red pilled, but diet
Right,
pilled.
right.
In one chapter where he's talking about food deserts, he's like, "Ugh, you can't even fix a food desert by putting a grocery store in there. Like, my friend put, like, his own little indie grocery store in this poor town, and no one shopped there, so, like, habits die hard." And I'm just like,
Okay.
okay. Like, if it's an indie grocery store, it's
It's
probably
probably
incredibly
too
expensive.
expensive. Yeah.
And, like, just because it's there doesn't mean people can necessarily get to it and, like, bring back the food or, like, have the time to do it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just like, this is why poor people are obese. And I'm just like, okay, bud.
Oh, no.
All right, bud. And then, like, the same chapter, he talks about how he spent, like, $1,000 on groceries to, like, cook for 3 for a week or whatever, or, like, filled up, like, 4 carts. And I'm just like, oh, you are so out of touch.
Yeah. It's a banana, Michael. How much could it cost? $10?
Moving into the groovy times, the 60s and 70s, like 1977 is when nutritionists started to tout that, like, fat is bad for you and that, like, eggs have too high of cholesterol and, like, all of this health food stuff nonsense starts coming into fashion. And this leads to the creation of low fat or no fat products and replacements like I can't believe it's not butter and egg beaters kind of like popping up on shelves. And so you have like a lot of interesting sort of consumer reflection happening in like the 60s and 70s based on like what people are being told that they should eat and then the products that are being created to kind of fulfill that. This is also kind of the era of the grocers union where like stores started to be closed by like 6 p.m. on weekdays and like no stores were open on like Sundays and stuff. And like, this is also the cultural shift where women are entering the workforce again and continuing to work after marriage. So working families where the wife worked too could only grocery shop really on Saturdays, which caused like long lines and like overflowing carts or maybe even like more than one cart because you kind of had to get all of your grocery shopping done in 1 week and then take it all back with you, which was possible because you had fridges and freezers and cars and maybe like prepackaged stuff or like a bunch of canned things that wouldn't necessarily go bad.
Right. I think one thing I did not mention in my discussion of like when we were talking about grocery shopping habits, one thing I didn't mention is I feel very strongly about I really try to avoid grocery shopping on the weekend if possible. Like my parents-in-law always, because they work like 9 to 5, right? Which, so obviously it makes most sense to go grocery shopping on like a Saturday or a Sunday, but because I was raised by the type of parents who leave concerts early so that they can beat traffic,
yes.
I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's when the people will be there. I don't want to go where people is. So that's why I usually try to go grocery shopping during the week.
Yeah, David and I, depends on like what day the food runs out.
Yeah.
If it's like, well, it's a Thursday, gotta go grocery shop. Or maybe it's a Saturday morning like we did yesterday. So in the 90s and, wow, I just kind of skipped the 80s. That wasn't intentional.
Not
like in the
not important. I don't think anything important happened in the 1980s.
I'm sure stuff did. But like in the 1980s to 2000s, you kind of start getting like prepared food and salad bars in grocery stores. And like the expectation that you can just kind of buy a rotisserie chicken from a grocery store,
Yes.
And of course, like stuff like this kind of happens because customers are asking for it, right? They're like, well, I just want to buy like a cooked chicken. Do you have any cooked chickens? And they're like, sure, here's a cooked chicken. And then everyone wants a cooked chicken. It's like you give a mouse a cookie. You give one white lady a cooked chicken.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, man, the number of rotisserie chickens I have probably eaten in my life from grocery store is so many.
So many. Yeah, so you have like prepared food and salad bars. And then this was like another big shakeup in the food distribution sphere, but like when Walmart started carrying groceries, that was huge.
Right.
And like when Target started carrying groceries or like other retail stores started selling groceries, that was like that had like a lot of backlash where people were like, oh, they're gonna run grocery stores out of business or whatever. And I think it's so interesting, like the dichotomy between like, oh, food deserts are a real shame, but we can't let a Walmart have groceries because that'll kill us or whatever. And it's like, well, there's probably a Walmart in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And so you'd actually be helping a lot of places that have food deserts by allowing the Walmart to sell food.
Yeah, that's definitely that's something that I've definitely observed in my experiences like traveling and whatever. Or there are a lot of rural areas where like there really is like nothing around but Walmart, you know? So that's just like where you go.
My grandmother lives in Dover, North Carolina, which is a tiny, tiny town in the middle of like nowhere, eastern North Carolina. And the closest like grocery store, which is the Piggly Wiggly, is probably like a 30-minute drive. And so, relatively recently, probably in the last 10 years, they put in like a mini Walmart in like one corner of this tiny town. And I mean, like, that was pretty. They called it the Dover Mall.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
And it was like it was very small. Like it wasn't even the size of like a full grocery store. But you could at least get like fresh milk and like bread and stuff, like some provisions. And so it made the act of getting like, oh, if you forgot something, it made that like a lot easier than driving back to the old Piggly Wiggly in town. We also around this time have like the pop-ups of Costco, Sam's Club, all of these like bulk grocery stores where you can like buy things cheaper but in bulk, kind of like, you know, grocery store owners used to do in the olden days.
Oh, true.
But, you know, also competitive places for like, you know, your local grocery stores at Costco because you can get a lot of things there for cheap. Or like a lot of things for cheap, but honestly, it's so expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't usually shop at a Costco or a Sam's Club. Alongside, you're also getting niche grocery stores like Whole Foods or Sprouts or Mom's Organic Market or my personal favorite grocery store, Trader Joe's, where like these things offer something that the traditional grocery store cannot or did not. So you can like go to Trader Joe's and get your special Trader Joe's products, or you can go to Whole Foods and get like super organic carrots.
This carrot doesn't even know what a pesticide is.
It's never seen one in its entire life of a carrot.
Exactly.
Or eyes.
Yeah.
In the 2000s, you also get farmers markets. Like, you know, farmers markets were happening before, but like they boomed in the 2000s. It was like Farmers Market Palooza, where it was offered as like an alternative to your grocery store. It was very like anti-establishment, I feel like, where it's like, you can't trust your grocery store. You have to go to this market and buy all of these fresh but extremely pricey fruits and vegetables and things like that.
I think it's, well, two things. Number one, I think it's partially we get the like, as you said, you can't trust your grocery store because by this point your local grocery store is probably a chain. We are getting further and further separated from like where the food comes from, you know? There's some argument that like, you know, the like farm to table movement or that like your carbon footprint, that type of thing. And like, you know, you need to know where your food comes from. But then there's also, I think it's cool also to think about how like, it's basically bringing us back to the beginning of like, it's just like a outdoor open air market. And usually each of the retailers at a farmer's market is like, this is the meat guy. This is the mushroom guy. This is the, you know, it's really pretty similar to just a market that, you know, you'd probably have like 100 years ago where you would go and buy your meats from one guy and then, you know.
Kind of full circle.
Yeah, the snake is eating its own tail a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, farmers markets aren't like the one place to get food anymore, but we are kind of like, I feel like I love shopping at a farmer's market, right? Like it's so fun to go walk through and like see all the things you can buy and like, ooh, the pretty carrots, they're purple, or like, oh wow, look at that tomato, it tastes so good. But the sustainability of it is like something else. Maintenance Phase has a pretty good episode about, I think it's like a Michael Pollan book or something where they talk about this. And so moving into the 2020s, the modern American supermarket can really have as many as 40 to 50,000 items.
Wow.
all with their own unique barcode or SKU. Do you know what SKU stands for? Don't look at the notes.
It's too late. I already looked at the notes.
No! I was trying to quiz you.
No, I didn't know what it was before. It stands for stock keeping unit, but that makes sense. I also always heard it pronounced as skew.
I always called it a SKU. I used to know like the SKU for a tomato. I don't remember it anymore.
Bananas? 4011.
4009.
Oh.
Nope.
Oh no.
I believe you. I don't believe me. And so, like, grocery stores today, obviously, consumer wants ultimately drive what groceries put on their shelves. Like when we had that gluten-free craze back in the late 2010s, all those gluten-free goods started popping up on shelves. When, like, there was a bigger push for non-dairy items, we had, like, oat milk start to pop up, almond milk, things besides just soy milk appearing on shelves. The big push towards organics in like the early 2000s led to like a lot of grocery stores having like a small organic section where produce was organic. And for the most part, people kind of only want to go to one store for everything they need. And stores today basically can provide almost everything you need all in one place. There are so many departments of a grocery store, but just to list a few, you have grocery in the true meaning of the word, which also includes wellness products.
Oh.
You have produce, frozen/dairy, meat, deli/prepared foods, beer/wine, but not in Maryland, seafood, bakery, and floral. There's always a floral department in grocery stores, and I didn't really think about that until I started like researching it. And I'm like, oh yeah. Market research about grocery stores kind of like figured out that you can make more money on a product if you have more varieties.
Oh my God, I was listening to a story on NPR. I think it's How I Built This. It's just like one of their economics shows. On my way to the grocery store today that was talking about, there's a term for it that I've already forgotten, but companies have figured out that they can sell you the same thing, but just in different size packages.
Yes.
For like different prices. Just think of like soda, right? You can get a 2 liter of soda for like, a big party, or you can get a 12-pack for individual cans, or you can get the mini cans, or you can get like, it's the same soda. It's just a matter of packaging. So anyway, it kind of freaked my bean a little bit.
Yeah, I also read in the grocery book that like a store's specific brand, like Target, I think Whole Foods is 365, I think. Those like special like 365 milk or whatever is essentially the same milk that you're getting from like the carton right next to it. And by essentially the same, I mean it is the same. It's the same milk.
Yep.
There's no difference. They just slap their own label on it to give customers like another choice.
Yeah, and I think it's my understanding that a lot of like store brands are cheaper because there's just less advertising.
Exactly. And so, like, today in our food buying sphere, we have, like, Amazon buying Whole Foods. We have, like, Amazon grocery delivery service, as well as Fresh Direct grocery delivery service. We have also places that ship you meals to make, like, Blue Apron, HelloFresh, or, like, already made meals, like Factor meals. And so there's kind of, like, multiple ways to grocery shop now. And I feel like this will have to be maybe a special bonus episode to kind of get into like the modern ways that people shop, because there's so much information about it.
Yeah.
That goes across like age, race, gender, location, religion, like all this stuff. It is a very complicated sort of informational dump.
Yeah.
We also have, I think, COVID, which really altered the grocery scene in a pretty big way, at least for a little while.
Do you have memories of grocery shopping during COVID? Because I do.
Oh, it was a nightmare.
Nuts.
Nightmare time.
Yep.
Terrible time. Hated it. Yeah, that's when we were living in Annapolis, and we were still going to, like, our local Trader Joe's, and it had, like, it only allowed maybe 30 people in the store at a time, and so you had to, like, wait outside in a line to, like, be let in, and, like, once one person came out, they let, like, one person in. And it was like you had to like wipe down your cart before you came in and all of this stuff. And there were like essentially like traffic directors where it was like you can only go this way down the aisle so that people would like, pass each other. For like people who are listening to this in the future, COVID was a wild time.
My most distinct COVID grocery shopping memory was like early COVID. I think before We even had mask mandates where everybody was just panicking and just buying toilet paper. There just like wasn't food. We went to our local Giant, which was already pretty small, and it was just like wiped out. Like there
Yeah.
was just nothing.
It was very apocalyptic.
Very much so. But how did COVID change after COVID, change our grocery shopping habits, Julia?
Let me tell you. According to Forbes in 2019, 81% of US customers had never purchased groceries online. I was one of that 81%. Like, I still have never purchased groceries online.
I don't either. I am too much of the self-service person of like, I want to pick out my own dang tomatoes, you know?
I have a quote that I'll have to have you read later.
Oh
Because
boy.
old-timey people had very similar feelings about ordering groceries over the phone. However, with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation has turned the other way around. In 2020, 79% of US consumers ordered their groceries online. Online grocery sales in the US increased from 1.2 billion US dollars in August 2019 to 7.2 billion US dollars in June 2020.
Wow.
So it got real big. But of course that data is kind of like from around when we are smack dab in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
In 2023, a study showed that roughly the same percentage of Gen Z consumers in the United States, which is about over 40%, said that they would prefer to do most of their grocery shopping online, as well as offline. Interestingly, millennials were keen on shopping mostly online for groceries given the choice.
Huh. Because we all have social anxiety and we don't want to talk to people. The kids today. Actually, the kids today say that they don't mind shopping offline, so I
The
don't know
adults
what's
today.
the middle-aged, yeah.
The middle-aged people today. I think probably online grocery shopping would have continued as a slow-growing trend, right? But then like the pandemic came in and it was just like, whoop, there it goes. That little red bar is rising real fast and has had like a lasting impact where it's like convenience and no social interaction and like all of that stuff. One final like fun modern grocery store change is grocery stores having, as I wrote in my notes, whole ass restaurants in them.
Not a half-ass restaurant, a
No,
whole
whole
ass.
ass restaurant. I know like the Whole Foods that was in Silver Spring when I was growing up. It was there for like a long time. And then around like the late 2010s, it got remodeled and they added like a sushi restaurant and like a smoothie
Whoa.
place. And there was like also a wood-fired pizza place. Like there was a whole like restaurant food court area.
I was gonna say, there's a fond place in my heart for the, I don't know if they still have them or not. I think this is one of those things that they maybe got rid of during the pandemic, and I'm not sure if it's come back. But at Sam's Club, they have like a little cafe, which is kind of a stretch. It's just like you can get pizza or hot dog or soda or soft pretzel. It's nothing especially fancy, but there's a special place in my heart for all the times I went with my dad to Sam's Club to do some shopping, and then we would get big hot dog there.
But yeah, so now like I think this is kind of a response to the online grocery shopping, right? Where it's like, how do we get the kids back in the grocery stores? And making grocery stores more of a communal area or a communal space as well as like a place to get your food. There's one grocery store called Heinen's in Chicago where it's like they went all out on like this one grocery store that they built in like an old bank where it was
Ooh.
like the top floor was like for wine and beer and you could have like essentially wine tastings up there or like get little snackies with your wine. And there were like restaurants or like a food court in it and all of this stuff. And one guy was like, yeah, let's like, it's supposed to be a place for the community. It's not just a grocery store, it's like the food place. And I'm like, interesting, interesting. But with that, Nicole, are you ready for a little intermission and to give us our food fact of the day?
I sure am. Let's go get that food fact of the day, Julia.
Let's get it!
All right, Julia, maybe you are a 1950s housewife.
Me?
Maybe you are preparing to go on a road trip with your little family.
A road trip?
Yeah, and one thing that you may stumble upon on your road trip across America is a Valentine diner.
A Valentine diner?
To give my personal context, of this. So several months ago, for my dad's birthday, we went to this classic car museum, which as a non-straight person, this is just sort of not my thing, but that's fine. My dad had a good time and it was his birthday, so that's what's important. And I was just sort of like, okay, that sure is a car, just kind of walking around being like, that's a car, all right.
That too is a car.
That is also a car. Until I discovered that they had a tiny little diner inside this museum.
Oh.
Non-functioning, but as a tiny diner that you could go in and sit at, and you could push little buttons to play music on the jukebox, and they had like little informational signs and stuff. And so what I had discovered was what is called a Valentine diner. These were manufactured by a man named Arthur Valentine in Kansas as part of his Valentine lunch system.
Valentine lunch system.
And we all know how much I love a man with a system, TM.
TM.
The way the Valentine lunch system worked is, all right, Julia, you're no longer a mid-century housewife. You are instead an enterprising young person. You want to start your own business. You want to get ahead in the world, be your own boss.
I want to start my own business.
Yeah, exactly.
Get ahead in the world, be my own boss.
Yeah, yeah. So what you might do as an enterprising young person is you may look at a catalog from Arthur Valentine and the Valentine lunch system and order an entire diner, the whole building.
The whole building?
Yep.
So like a Sears catalog?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Very much like so they're prefabricated, if you've ever heard of like prefab. In Kansas, they have this like giant factory place that, you choose from like whatever model you want. They've got some that have different sizes, different designs, whatever it is, and you say like, I want the number 12, the little chef.
Is that what it was called? Like the little chef model? Was that a model?
There is one that's actually called the little chef, yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
So you pick whichever one that you want, and then you pay your money. Mr. Valentine and his associates build the diner, and it's small enough that they can put it on a flatbed truck or on a railroad car. And they just like ship it. It's already pretty much made and ready to go. And they just plop it down wherever you want to start your business. And It's like ready to be up and running in a couple of hours. It already has like the grills in it and the table, not tables, but it's usually just like a lunch counter with seats. And then you're ready to go. And then you have your own diner.
Incredible.
So I was talking about road trips earlier. Usually these are put somewhere pretty rural, catering to both travelers and locals. You can tell if it is an authentic Valentine diner by the wall safe, which I saw in the one that I visited. So there's like a safe that's built into the wall that has this logo that looks like a little Valentine's Day heart, and it's got a serial number, and that's how you know it's the real deal. And so, as I said, these are usually pretty small. I want to say the biggest ones that I saw were like 12 or 15 seats. They're small enough that they're designed to be run. You only need like 1 or 2 employees to run them. And they also don't cost a whole lot. I saw a number about $5,000. I don't know exactly what year that number is based on. So, I mean, like if you're just talking, starting your own business is usually pretty expensive, but that's a relatively affordable entry point. But I mean, you also have really low overhead if you only have 1 or 2 employees, so you can make it pretty profitable in that sense. The period that we're mostly talking about here is kind of the 1930s to the 1970s. They were a really big hit during the period of the Great American Road Trip, which is kind of like after World War II. We've got interstate highways. Everybody has a car, which is also just sort of like the big boom of diners in general. But then once, fast food starts to get really popular, drive-throughs, highways get rerouted and that type of thing, they eventually are not able to stay in business. There are still some operating Valentine diners that you can eat at. They are mostly located in like the Midwest or west of the Mississippi. So there is one in Montana.
Oh, I'm looking it up right now. It is 5 hours away. I'm going.
So that still exists. There's also a former Valentine, it's still technically a Valentine diner, but it's no longer in operation. That is outside of Flagstaff. That is now sitting vandalized and decrepit, which is really sad. But I definitely have seen it before on my drives, like in and out of Flagstaff. I will include a link from the Kansas Historical Society so that, folks at home can check and see if there is a Valentine diner near them. They're not all like Midwest. I think I did see some in Florida and other places,
Oh.
but, look and maybe go to see a little, go on a little road trip. Well, I think if we are going to start our own Valentine diner, we need to go grocery shopping, Julia. So
It's true. So let's start to get a little wiggy with it.
let's get wiggy.
So, as you probably know, Nicole, the process of buying or procuring food has been a daily endeavor for people forever.
The dinner problem has never really gone away because we have to,
Nope.
much like making your bed or doing laundry, it's something you kind of have to do every day.
Wow, I don't make my bed every day, and I definitely don't do my laundry every
Well,
day.
I mean, it's the Sisyphean nature of certain chores and tasks of, carrying around a
Mm-hmm.
human flesh bag.
That's true, that's true. Yeah, so you gotta eat every day, unfortunate or fortunate. I love eating.
Yeah.
And for basically all of recent history, that laborious chore has been the women of the household's duty. And because of this, maybe, who knows, women have been held accountable for the health and success of their family through their thriftiness and the food that they buy. And we've talked about this before a lot, right? Like,
We talked about this in episode 1 with Sylvester
yeah,
Graham and women of the house, you gotta be buying real bread, not the fake stuff. Otherwise, your children will become corrupt and sinful.
exactly. And like this is still pretty true. Like there's more of a gender balance I feel like today, but it's still like in a survey, 2023 survey of US shoppers, 68% of respondents who identified themselves as primary shoppers in their household were women, while 56% were men. So like it's closer, but
Hmm.
it's still definitely like a majority of women do the shopping, the grocery shopping.
Yep.
Another book that I read for this podcast this is kind of where I got hit with the, man, I can't fit everything into this episode because there's just so much, was Tracy Deutsch's book, Building a Housewife's Paradise, which is, oh, Nicole, it's right up our alley. It talks about like gender and politics and
Ooh.
sociology and grocery shopping. And I was just like, God, this whole book, like every chapter is an episode. But she kind of talks about the inherent gender associations that come with food shopping. So if you could please read the pretty long quote in green.
I shall. Food and its preparation and serving figured prominently in the ideology of domesticity and its class nature, beginning at least in the antebellum period with the publication of women's housekeeping guides. Cooking and serving were celebrated as the stage on which women could best enact the work of efficiency and of generosity, work that would maintain familial coherence. Meals were the vehicle for love, nutrition, the reinforcement of religious and communal norms, the education of children, and displays of skill for all the ways that women might convey their affection, nurturance, and fitness. 20th century science of home economics that encouraged women to see food and its preparation as a framework for their family's health. This emphasis on mealtime has not ended. In the early 21st century, researchers suggested that home-cooked family dinners would prevent everything from premarital sex to obesity to drug use. The ideology of domesticity emphasized the work done by meals and firmly assigned responsibility for those meals to women. Wow. I'm just thinking about how, like, man, if I had had more home-cooked family dinners, then I wouldn't have had premarital sex.
You wouldn't have been gay, Nicole.
No.
It's all your mom's fault.
Oh, man. Well, it's the way it goes, I guess.
Yeah. Some more quotes I have kind of around that is like there's this one study where that talked about how a mom eats is going to influence how their kids eat.
Okay. I guess.
And so like there was this one doctor called Horodininsky,
We've got some names here today, huh?
I'm struggling, but I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
And so what Hordeninsky writes is that what and how mothers eat is the most direct influence on what toddlers eat. Health professionals need to consider this when developing strategies to increase child's consumption of healthy foods. Diets low in fruit and vegetables, even at young ages, pose increased risks for chronic diseases later in life. And Nicole, I feel like you're smart enough to kind of read between the lines there.
This is just reminding me of like the Aubrey Gordon's movie Your Fat Friend, and also
Yes.
the podcast maintenance phase, and how like it's basically the mother's responsibility, quote unquote, to make sure that the child is like eating properly, or like it's the mother's responsibility to make sure that the child doesn't get fat, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it.
As if, mothers are not under enough pressure already to be perfect, perfect in every aspect of parenting. And also as if we as women are not under enough scrutiny as to every single thing that we eat all the time. That's, I think, why it makes me mad. I'm just like, God, duh.
No, that's exactly it. It's like, in these days, we don't outwardly say, like, you have to make sure you're not fat so that your kids don't become fat, right? We, like,
Yeah.
kind of coach it in all of this wellness talk. But it is, like, if your kid is, I don't know, got some sort of learning disability, or is bigger than the other kids, or is not good at sports, or like has a really bad attention span, like that is going to be blamed on the mom
Yep.
for giving their kid like a sugary breakfast, or for like not feeding them correctly. There's a great line in Tracy's book that reads, "Women were regarded as both the cause of and the solution to difficult social and economic problems."
I'm snapping. Yes. Go off, Tracy.
Go off, Tracy. And I'm just like, that's so true, because it's like throughout, all of these moral panics, it is a woman's fault, but also they're the only ones that can fix it.
Yeah, I was going to say society, our patriarchal society loves to create problems, attribute those problems to women, and then tell women, well, you have to fix this. What? What?
Yep. An example of this is kind of after World War I, when inflation went wild. The cost of food more than doubled in under 10 years, and it was like, oh my god, it's women's fault.
Oh my god, that just reminds me of the line from the Barbie movie where one of the little girls calls Barbie a fascist, and Barbie is like sitting there crying like, I don't control the means of commerce. It's that 100%.
Oh my god, the Barbie movie is a gem. I love it so much. But she talks about how, like, there was a national trend towards blaming women for high costs. Even organizations established to empower women echoed the discourse of housewifely laziness as the root cause of inflation. Mrs. Julian Heath, the president of the National Housewives League, warned readers of the Ladies' Home Journal that women's ignorance of market conditions, their naive trust of grocers, and their sheer laziness resulted in wasted food dollars. And so they're like, women are bad at grocery shopping, so it's their fault that the food costs are high.
Ah, yes. Frivolous spending.
And there was so many more quotes about it. Going back to chain stores and how I talked about them earlier, they were also pushed as a woman-friendly alternative. They appealed to women with promises of low prices and trustworthy foods and freedom to kind of choose products themselves. And they marketed to notions of women's autonomy and independence and lives unencumbered by prejudice or inequality. Basically, they were like, you can go to a chain store and you don't have to worry that you are being bad with money, because it's going to be low prices and no one's going to be mad at you and all the food's going to be high quality and stuff. So it was like, this takes the onus off of you, women, and puts it on the store. And I mean, like, that's not entirely true. You're still kind of blamed depending on, like, what you choose to eat.
Yeah, because I was going
right?
to say, ultimately, if anything, I feel like I'm the one picking out the food,
Yeah. The creation of, like, chain grocery stores was such a huge topic. There were, like, legal actions against it. There were, like, court hearings, congressional hearings. There were really intense marketing campaigns. Like, the act of having a chain grocery store created, like A&P becoming a chain grocery store in the first place, was like a huge moral panic of the time that kind of like encompassed so many demographics, and the marketing for it really pushed towards minorities to be like, you're not going to be prejudiced against if you come into a chain store because it's regulated, which, like, isn't exactly the case.
Yeah, that's a nice thought, though.
It was the marketing for it, right? It was it was the empty promise. But it's definitely something I want to read more into because it is so shockingly big. But I mean, like, also, we can talk about so many things when it comes to women and buying food and that sort of moral responsibility. I have here my little conspiracy theory called the consumerism pipeline.
Ooh,
where it was like,
tell me about it. Tell me about it, Queen.
Well, I'm just like, okay.
Is this a Pepe Sylvia board? Are we about to be connecting a lot of little strings?
This is like a little bit of a Pepe Sylvia board, right? So, like, people with influence set an unachievable but moral goal today that is wellness. And these goals are propped up with studies, quote studies, that are sponsored by corporations that want to make money. Like, for instance, the no-fat, low-fat craze was supported by studies that were sponsored by sugar industries, right? And so you have these studies that are kind of meant to scare people into eating a certain way. For our day-to-day, and for, like, the last, 70 years, it's been the, quote, obesity epidemic. You then have these retailers and entrepreneurs take advantage of the consumer fear and sell specialized products. You're filling the gap. You're giving people the gluten-free foods that they want. You're giving people I can't believe it's not butter. And then you have this kind of societal blame on mothers and women for failing to achieve the moral goal of wellness in themselves or their family. It is like this kind of constant pipeline, right? Where it's like, you can make endless money by selling fear and then blaming people who don't meet up to their unachievable expectations.
I mean, pretty much, like, that's the goal of, like, every business, obviously, is to make money. I mean, like, a good product is like, oh, I see a need for this, and so I'm going to create a product that fills that need. Even better is creating a problem and then creating a product that fills that need.
Yes.
The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about that is currently there's a huge craze for whole body deodorant.
Whole body deodorant?
Yes! Oh my god, I see nothing but constant TV ads for this. So do you know, like, Lumi?
Oh yeah, I thought that was just a normal deodorant.
No!
Where else is it going?
So the idea is, like, midway through the day you start to get a little sweaty. It's not you. You don't need a second shower. You can just put on some of this whole body deodorant. The lady is always like, butt cracks, skin folds. I mean, it's the same thing with, lots of other hygiene products. It's like, wait, I'm stinky? And they're like, yes, your whole body is stinky, but don't worry. We have a product that you can buy so that you will not be stinky. It's not food related, but it's a similar thing of, like, you just create a problem and then sell people a solution to that problem.
All in the same take. That's very true. Tracy, again, has, like, a really great quote kind of about how food shopping as a mom or, for your household is, like, heavily laborious, and it is labor, right?
Uh-huh.
And so if you could read that final quote.
Every transaction represented labor saved, for instance, by purchasing processed food, or precious cash wasted, for instance, by purchasing processed food of poor quality or that family members would not eat. Every transaction meant a choice, buying in bulk and preserving produce, or buying in smaller quantities to be sure that food did not go bad. Indeed, for all of economists' frequent admonitions that demand for food is inelastic, food choice is felt, and I would suggest continue to feel, elastic, variable, adaptable, uncertain, and extremely weighty. Women's food shopping was, for all these reasons, difficult and important labor. Yeah, I mean, this just reminds me of, like, especially around the holidays, I think a lot about the emotional labor and sometimes physical labor of, like, cooking for the holidays. If you have kids, like, buying presents for kids, buying presents for your parents, buying presents for your in-laws' parent, like, that, like, women are, this is true for grocery shopping, this is also true for just, like, women are expected to just do this labor.
Yeah.
But it takes up our mental space as well. This has been well documented that like mothers, wives are often thinking about like, all right, Timmy's got a bake sale tomorrow. I have to buy XYZ for the bake sale. I have to get Jane's ballet shoes picked up. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of that, like labor.
Yeah, I think about, all of the stuff my mom had to do. And this is definitely like in my later years. I don't know about you. I definitely had a phase where I'm like, I'll never be like my mom and be a stay-at-home mom. Bleh.
Hmm.
And then later on, I'm like, God damn, I have no idea how she managed 3 kids, all with separate after school activities, all with like doctor appointments and like needs and food and friends, like going to
Yeah.
friends' houses, like all that stuff. I have no idea how she did it.
Yeah, I feel like it frequently when we do the like Get Wiggy section of the podcast, I think about one of my mentors in undergrad for sociology. A lot of his research was based on like domestic labor and
Mm-hmm.
how basically all this time has gone by and we've had like waves of feminism and like yes, there's definitely been progress, but if you still ask women like who does most of the labor in the house or if that's been studied, it's still women. And that's definitely part of the grocery shopping, the dinner problem.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right in the sense of like, I feel like a lot of women still have to carry the day to day burden of living.
Yeah.
Just like the
Yeah.
organizational,
Well,
like,
just like household management.
yeah.
I mean, even if you don't have kids, like somebody still has to go grocery shopping, somebody still has to clean
Mm-hmm.
and
Balance is good. You work it out with your partner.
it's also ultimately like what matters more is like if you feel that it is equal. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Yeah.
it's realistically like if someone were to come in here and like time you or to ask you like all of the things that you do, maybe it's more 70-30, 60-40. But as long as the two of you feel that it is equal, then that's really what matters.
Exactly. It is a open channel of communication with your partner. But either way, if you're out of food, you gotta go to a grocery store.
Or maybe you get it delivered. You call Amazon. No one
Yeah.
calls Amazon. There's no phone number. Sometimes
Beep
I've
boop, beep boop, beep.
hello
Hello,
Jeff
is this Amazon?
Bezos.
Hello, Jeff Bezos. I'd like to put in an order for some chili fries.
Well, regardless of how you get groceries, thanks for lunching with us, and we will see you.
See you next time. That was
Bye.
so bad.
Oh no,
Bye.
I think it was really good. Our theme music is Red Onions by Louis Zong. Please check out the rest of his album Vegetable Soul in the description. You can follow us on Twitter at Girls Lunch. Nicole is also on Twitter at NicoleH262, and her website is NicoleHilton.com. Julia is smarter than all of us and not on social media. Thank you for listening.
And I remember being a kid being like, I won't ever be able to get a taxi unless I shave my armpits.